Good evening. Welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news broadcasting live and available on demand. Available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and of course, Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Hello, everyone. I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Fay What? And I'm filling in for Al Ferguson, your gay guru. This evening, we bring you the news of and perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian, trans, students, youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS, healthcare, business, political advocacy, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Yes, so let's get this party started by welcoming my brother from another mother. You can call him John Hayden. He's a journalist for 28 years. He now works for several outlets, including South Florida Gay News, as a senior reporter and community editor, covering politics, entertainment, and local events directly impacting the LGBTQ plus community. John's interviewed everyone from presidents to Oscar winners. He is still moist from last week's floods, even moister than usual. Welcome, John. I can't believe I got through that.
Thank you so much. You know, when I was growing up, you know what my favorite band was?
What?
Moister.
Wasn't that Mr.
After we
That was a
finish
joke.
here, do you want to go to Bubbles and Pearls and have Moisters on the half shell?
Oh, God. There's just something about that word, like moist. Like, you know, like on Sunday at Pride when we were all like melting to death, right? Moist was not one of the words that I wanted to use to describe us, but I'll use it to describe you.
As well.
Welcome, John.
All right, up next, let's welcome anchor TriniDaddy. Trini is a concert musician, director, and artist in the South Florida area. He currently is a violinist and pianist with the Miami City Ballet and is the program director for the Seminole Theater Players at the historic Seminole Theater in Homestead, Florida. He is also one of the permanent hosts of It's Happening Out. Welcome back, sir.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Trini. Welcome back. Are you sure that's official, that you are stuck on It's Happening Out?
And it's a pleasure to sit next to the two moistest women in town. Let's welcome Mark Pettitt. Mark is an entrepreneur with a 15-year business as a leadership coach and trainer. Also known as Sir Mark Silver, he is Mr. Sawmill Leather, Sir of 2021, and loves being an ambassador of the leather community. He loves physics, space, and his fellow geeks out there. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you, Trini, although I never, ever want to follow the word moist again in my introduction. I hope that everybody who is enjoying all these fabulous prides will come out and join us a little bit up north for Treasure Coast Pride that is coming up this Saturday, tcalliance.com. Come see us.
Awesome.
Now, let's welcome anchor Franchesca D'Amore. Her vision is to extend education and support on behalf of the homeless, the arts, and the LGBTQ plus community. Currently a proud board member of Safe Schools South Florida and a former board member of the Hollywood LGBTQ plus Council, she's also the entertainment director for My Hollywood Pride 2023. A quote from her, "If I can inspire even one person to boldly live their truth, my job is done." Good evening, Franchesca.
Hi, so glad to be here with everybody. I just wanted to mention that on April 25th at Cinema Paradiso in Fort Lauderdale, Fay and I will be on a panel discussion discussing the movie Victoria. So that'll start at 6:30 and the filming will start at 7. So please show up. It's going to be great. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, April 19th.
We begin with queering up breaking news. Don't Say Gay expanded to all ages in Florida public schools. At the request of the DeSantis administration, the Florida Department of Education approved a rule today barring public school classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity for all grades. The department is building upon restrictions from the parental rights and education law dubbed Don't Say Gay by critics, which focus on classroom instruction in kindergarten through 3rd grade. The rule prohibits teaching about sexual orientation and gender identity in grade 4 and higher unless required by state academic standards or part of a reproductive health course of lesson. Teachers who violate the prohibition could have their licenses suspended or revoked. The rule goes beyond legislation the Republican majority legislature is considering, which would expand the prohibition of classroom instruction through 8th grade. State Education Commissioner Manny Diaz Jr. said, quote, "The teaching of our standards is what should be going on, and none of this material is covered in our standards," end quote. Well, late breaking news. What do you folks think? I mean, when Don't Say Gay was first presented, we were all saying, oh, but it's only till 3rd grade and no one's teaching sexual orientation or anything like that to 3rd graders, right? And then people like Franchesca and other folks were like, this is just kind of a doorway to make them make it all the way till 12th grade. And I was one of the people that was like, nah, there's no way. Come on. And here we are.
I'm actually not surprised. You know, last year people were like, oh, it's only kindergarten through 3rd grade. It doesn't really affect us. And I'm like, no, there's a bigger agenda behind this. And all LGBTQ plus folks are going to be affected by this. And this is a doorway through using children as bait. And it's just horrible. But I'm not surprised that this is where we are right now. With Safe Schools, we deal a lot with our GSAs in high schools. So we've basically been ousted from high schools, and we've had to reinvent ourselves to create safe spaces and create connections with students virtually. So we have to keep on fighting for our students, and we have to keep on creating spaces, safe spaces for our students to come to as a community.
My master's research when I went through school was all about suicide rates of LGBTQ plus kids going through school, and depending on the population that you looked at, it was anywhere between 15 and 50 times higher than for their straight counterparts.
Oh my goodness.
So now to not even see yourself represented in a standard curricula, and for a lot of kids, they don't even get to see their families represented in that curricula.
Yeah.
I am very sad to say that number is going to go up.
Yeah, the Trevor Project says it every year, and especially when things like this happen, of course those numbers are going to go up. John?
Well, what makes this especially odious is that it's not a law. Now, yeah, the state legislature and the Congress, they can make very narrow laws to target one specific thing. But generally, laws are written like when they give guidance to things like the Department of Education. And then the rulemaking is left to the department. And in theory, that's a good thing because it allows a department to be more flexible, to change with the times. We saw a lot of that during COVID.
Yeah.
Agencies, revamped their own rules to be able to adjust to current situations. But what makes this even worse is that DeSantis is going to be there saying, K through 8, and now he's saying K through 12. It's like he's trying to have both, and no one's really going to know what to do, what to repeal, and none of this is going to be able to be completely and easily overturned. This is how they're able to revoke liquor licenses from, I believe it was the Hyatt down in Miami, and things like that. So it's this weaponization of the bureaucracy, which I know I've been harping on for weeks now, but it's something that it just continues to go on, and we have to point it out. These people who are making the rules are not our elected representatives.
Yeah.
Well, as a teacher for 20 plus years, last year when the Don't Say Gay bill passed or law, I had an elementary class, and the first thing I was thinking was like, all right, K through 3rd grade, normally the subject doesn't come up. The subject that comes up all the time is Mr. TriniDaddy, are you single? And are you married?
What's your wife's name, right?
Yeah. And all kids, if you ever teach any group of kids, you'll always get that. And so, because nobody wants this, I've been single my whole life, so it's totally fine. But I was thinking, what would I say? And so I was consulting with other teachers. I'm like, how do we answer these questions? And there was that situation, I think it was in Orange County or somewhere in Florida, where they were questioning whether they could put pictures of their spouses up. And so at first they said no. And so people were taking their pictures down, but then enough complaining happened, they said they can put them back up. But my high school classes, it wouldn't be the first, second, or third time where a kid comes out to you, especially a music teacher, an arts teacher, somebody. We've typically been their safe spaces. So when they come up to you and say, I'm feeling this way, and this is how my parents feel about this, or my religious background or whatever, we've always been able to kind of be there without too much of a feeling of we're overstepping. And now, I don't know. I mean, like, do I get fired for that? It's a really difficult situation, and it sucks. We have to fight this.
And they call you Mr. TriniDaddy? I just always assumed it was Mr. Daddy.
Well, I'll refrain from saying all that stuff just because, another thing is just as a gay male teacher, like you always feel like you have a target on your back. So I have to be so careful all the time about anything that I say about my personal life, anything that could be put on social media, all of that stuff. So we already have that pressure, and to now have this codified into law that we can't even speak on anything about who we are as people, it's terrible.
And we're going to lose a lot of really good teachers like Mr. TriniDaddy because of that. Because, if I was a teacher and I was going through that, I just wouldn't, Teachers don't get paid that much to have to go through all that. And exactly like Trini said, we all know those arts teachers that saved our asses, saved our lives, made us feel seen. Maybe we didn't come out to them, but we at least knew, okay, this is a safe space for us. And now that will be taken away as well. It's scary times. Next up, let's queer up trans rights. Missouri government encourages people to report medical professionals offering gender-affirming care. The Transgender Center Concerns Form has gone live on the website of Republican Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, urging residents to submit a complaint or concern about gender transition intervention they have experienced or observed in Missouri. Bailey, who assumed the office of Attorney General in January, has brought in emergency restrictions against gender-affirming care for both minors and adults, which amounts to a near ban. As reported on Sunday, April 16th, trans Missourians will have to suffer through 3 years of a long-lasting, persistent, and intense pattern of gender dysphoria before obtaining treatment. The restrictions, which is set to take effect on April 27th until February 2024, will also force trans people to undergo 18 months of therapy before receiving gender-affirming care. Trans adults in Missouri will also be checked for social cognition and will have to have checkups for 15 years. The specifics of the restriction labeled in Missouri are believed to be the first of their kind in the U.S. As a protest, the LGBTQ plus allies and trans folk trolled the form, filling it in with responses such as name, ligma balls, and saying, quote, too many men are getting gender-affirming care from Viagra. Clearly, God wants them to have a limp dick. End quote. In a joint statement, the ACLU and Lambda Legal accused the Missouri government of playing politics with life-saving medical care. And that's absolutely true. So many studies have come out. The Trevor Project comes out every single year with their study. And they say that, gender-affirming care is key. People that have started this journey 5 years later are feeling better and feeling more closer to their true, authentic self. This just makes me want to vomit.
It's crazy.
Just vomit. What are you thinking, Franchesca?
From my understanding of it, so they're going to do this assessment of you, and of course they're going to find depression and anxiety, and their goal is to treat the anxiety and the depression before they treat the gender dysmorphia. But the gender dysmorphia causes the anxiety and the depression. So it is going to be virtually impossible to get gender-affirming care. And this scares me because now this is the first state that is doing this. Other states are going to follow suit.
Yeah.
And just like Florida was the first state to introduce all these laws, this is going to it's going to domino effect into other states, and it's terrifying. I feel that a lot of trans people will go back to the 80s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even 90s, where they would have to find
The black market
black
stuff.
market
okay?
estrogen, black market surgeries
That weren't
and
safe, that
not
a
safe
lot of
at
things
all.
went wrong, infections were, very common.
Yeah.
And, they'll be right on the same line as women trying to get abortions, okay?
Absolutely.
We'll all be on the same line in an alley somewhere.
Yeah.
I think this is going to fall under that category, though, of equal protection under the law. Because if you're not making cisgendered people go through therapy in order to get procedures done that affect the way that they look,
Breast implants.
then
Okay,
you
for
cannot
example.
enforce that specifically on just one other population. They can pass the law, but I don't think it's going to pass any kind of challenge or muster in a good court. Then again, look at our current courts.
But that's the thing, though. They don't care if it passes muster in a court, because if it passes muster in a court, then it's like, okay, see what we're doing, it's all good. And if it gets thrown out, they go, see, you need to elect more people like us so that we can appoint better judges. And it's literally a win-win for them on both sides, no matter how this turns out. There was one thing in the law, when I was first reading this story, I was like, oh, this is good. It was about the 18 months of counseling. Then I read that it was pre-transition. I think all states should offer counseling for trans people to help them go through the transition, to support them, to be there, because it's hard, because so many times people are alone and they go through it virtually alone.
Yeah.
So I would love to see state-sponsored counseling, just not the type and the angle that they're going for here. And why do you want to keep touching our bodies? Why do you care?
Yeah.
Quit being our doctor. We choose our doctor, we vote for our politicians, and we don't do them at the same place. My doctor has an office, my election has a polling place.
But John,
I did say election, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't say
Bigger picture, this is also just a test. I don't think that they really care whether it gets challenged or overturned, but just by doing this, they'll figure out how to craft the next state's laws even better to avoid challenges. I think it's the start of a very slippery slope.
And those medical professionals, I feel so awful for them. My wife is constantly, you all know my wife is a medical professional, and unfortunately she's worried about her license, and helping certain LGBTQ plus organizations. And that sucks that she has to even think about that, because that's her livelihood.
Yeah.
I think I was a little bit mixed on this topic when I was reading through it, because like you were saying about the counseling, like I think counseling is a great idea, like if it was going to be practiced in the right way, for them to have 18 months of counseling before, or even 3 months of counseling, some kind of support for them to help them figure out. I particularly thinking about minors, and like that's a huge transition to make during pubescent times, and I am definitely in favor of having counseling, maybe not to the length of that. And what is entailed in that counseling, I think, is really important. And like you were saying, it could be just this kind of Republican right-wing thing where it's like, oh, we're just going to treat your depression and not actually treat the root cause of what it is.
That we're in favor of it or not in favor of it, I think we're still exhibiting the same problem of thinking that it is our business at all.
It's not.
That doctor and that patient have the relationship that should tell them how to move forward. I know a lot of people who've made transitions, and every one of them had a doctor that required them to go through some counseling, but it was based on that professional evaluation.
Yeah.
No outsider should be allowed to make a rule that touches that relationship.
But Cuba is a communist country, right? And they've got this thing that they've always had, right, where you tattle on your neighbors. That's how you get ahead, okay? If you find out that your neighbor did something, you tattle to the person, and then you get an extra bread that week or whatever it is, right? This reminds me of that, right? Then you start tattling on hey, I think that my neighbor's daughter might be trans, and the mom is getting them gender-affirming care. It gives that opening to all those Karens out there that want us to stop breathing, to start putting parents in that place, in that tough spot.
And then they can take the children
And then
away.
they can take the children away.
And the parents can go to jail.
We're paying for that.
And I think that started last year. Weren't there some parents over on the West Coast that were investigated by Children's Services?
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. My body, my choice.
Well, next, let's queer up business. Howard Stern becomes the voice of reason in Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light controversy. Howard Stern usually isn't at the center of hot topic conversations anymore, but the notorious shock jock has inserted himself into America's culture war over LGBTQ plus visibility by challenging Kid Rock and other conservatives to explain why they are so incensed about transgender star Dylan Mulvaney's partnership with Bud Light. During one episode of Sirius XM's The Howard Stern Show, the radio host said he was dumbfounded over the strong backlash aimed at Anheuser-Busch, which provides Bud Light over Mulvaney, a transgender activist and social media star who boasts more than 10.8 million TikTok followers. Stern wondered if he was missing something. He said, quote, "I wish I could call Kid Rock and have him come on the show and just tell me, why are you so upset about this? How is it hurtful?" Rock went viral a few weeks ago by posting a video of himself using a semi-automatic rifle to shoot cases of Bud Light after Mulvaney began appearing in Bud Light ads on April 1st. Country singer Travis Tritt joined the anti-woke chorus by also tweeting that he would no longer support Anheuser-Busch, the company that produces Bud Light, as well as Budweiser and several other beer brands. The pure ridiculousness of this entire story and the tone deafness of these people who are, there was another guy that came out with the non-trans beer using a baseball bat to just annihilate a case of beer. Then you have Kid Rock with the semi-automatic rifle just shooting stuff up, realizing, or maybe they do realize, that we have the highest rate of murder and imprisonment and violence, that half the country is really trying to figure out how we deal with this. And they decide to go on, and maybe it's just for attention because they know they'll get a news story because nobody's following Kid Rock anymore. But I think it's the most disgusting thing. And there really is no, I tried to see it as many sides of it as I could possibly see as to why somebody would be so angry enough to be so violent and to post it on social media for something that really, if you don't like the beer, don't drink it. Yeah. And one thing I've always said to conservatives and Republicans is Republicans who are against trans, and you know, the Republican Party principle is get out of my life. Small government, you shouldn't have any dealings with what I'm going through personally, yet it is the Republican right-wing arm that is trying to get into everybody's personal life. It's so anti-Republican that I wish there were more Republicans that would be calling it out and saying, I need you all to be more Republican and get out of these people's lives.
And Dylan,
it's Republicans circa 1990s and before, not Republicans circa George Bush and forward, though.
I mean, when the Tea Party came.
Yeah.
And it is really just so, I think tone deaf is a very good word to use, because when you look at one of the biggest problems of the trans community is actually violence and being killed. So to voice your dissatisfaction with that message via violence just to me says, if they were to run into a trans person in an alley and nobody was looking, they would do exactly what they did with the baseball bat. They would do exactly what they did with the gun. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
Wow. And and what a crazy world that we're in, that Howard Stern is the voice of reason, right? Let's say that. I have had the pleasure to meet Howard Stern on a few occasions. And, he is honestly a quiet LGBTQ plus ally. Okay. He really is. It's not, it's all a show, folks. It's a show. It's a program. He actually had Harry Styles on a couple of weeks ago on his show, right? And we all love the fluidity of Harry Styles, right? Dreamy. Anyway, and so he Howard Stern literally said to Harry Styles, some weird shit is going down in this country right now where gay marriage and abortion access is at great risk, and even I'm worried. So for Howard Stern to say that, for Howard Stern to be worried for us, shit's bad. Right?
I just laughed when it said that he inserted himself into the story. I'm like, well, probably not very far.
Hey,
he says it himself.
Private part.
And here's and what he said. I wish I could call Kid Rock and ask him. Howard Stern, you can. All right, you've got that notoriety. You've got that clout that you can go and say, hey, producers, go call him for me. I want to have a conversation. Do that, film it, and then make that shit go viral. We need your voices right now.
Let's see what Kid Rock says back.
I think also we should give some special love to Dylan. I've been following her every day of womanhood, and she is just a trooper, and she's not ingesting the hate. She's giving out reason and love, and she is a true representation of the trans community.
Classy,
Classy.
wonderful. She is just such a lady, because I don't think that I would be that
Hell
calm
no.
about it. Every single
Hell
time she does a
no.
video back,
No.
it's very calm and she looks beautiful and it's like so eloquent. And I'm like, girl, you're so freaking classy.
Yeah, and
They
the
would've
earrings
burned down
would
the
come
block.
off.
I was already putting Vaseline on my face. Like, I was just like, For you folks at home, if you don't know what that means, that is how you fight. You put Vaseline on your face, so when somebody tries to, all right, just look it up.
Yes, gay boys don't get it twisted.
I have Vaseline, but never.
Okay, God.
Okay.
It's moist. Well, we move on and we queer up South Florida gay news. South Florida icon Norm Kent honored at memorial service, and the community comes together after the flood. Norm Kent, he cared about you, even though you may have never heard his name before now. A memorial service was held for the SFGN founder on Monday at the venue in Wilton Manors. Many spoke about his accomplishments, fighting for LGBTQ plus rights, marijuana freedom, sticking up for the little guys, and how much he was loved. But I'm here to say, not everybody loved Norm. When you're fighting against the tide, you're going to piss off a lot of people. And Norm did that. But that means he was doing it right. Journalists and lawyers aren't supposed to be loved by everyone, and he was both. I only met Norm during the waning days of his battle with cancer. He told me journalism still matters. Even from a wheelchair, he walked the walk, allowing me to do negative stories about organizations that SFGN had partnered, and Norm advised legally. He believes in keeping people honest, be they friends or foes. Thank you, Norm. The world is a lesser place without you. And while I'm saying thank you, I'd like to queer up gratitude. I, along with other Queer News Tonight and It's Happening Out crew and hosts, had a long night last Wednesday. By the time we finished the shows, we were trapped here. Feet of water rose and turned the streets into rivers. I'd like to thank Sunshine Cathedral for truly being a shelter in the storm for all of us. Thanks Steve, our crew member, for figuring out how to put Abbott Elementary on the monitor so we could binge away the time. And thank you to the Institute of Financial Wellness for letting me park my car there the next day because my street was still flooded. And thanks to my neighbor John, who saw me walking and ferried me the last couple of blocks home, and my neighbor Jeff, who eventually took me back to my car. Coworkers helping coworkers, strangers helping strangers, neighbors helping neighbors. We were literally all in the same boat. People come together during crises. Let's try to keep it going, because it shouldn't take 2 feet of rain to bring people together. And I absolutely believe that. And that sort of came to me as I was sitting in my home last Thursday and most of Friday, still stranded on my little island, waiting for my pool to recede. That's another story. But it was something that really got me thinking that, like, all these people who are tangentially part of my life or here a very big part of my life helped me get through those couple of days. And I know that my story isn't unique, and that makes me happy because it means other people are out there helping other people. And for Norm, I love you. I was lucky enough to be able to write about the memorial service and was also able to write about the aftermath of the floods. Both articles are online now at sfgn.com and will be on stands tomorrow. There's a little bit of some good information about making insurance claims, because a lot of us have only used our insurance for making wind claims over the years. Now we're finding out, oh wait, do I have flood insurance? So there's some really good tips by my personal insurance agent at We Insure in Wilton Manors, and he was gracious enough to take time to write up a little something for me so that other people can be helped. And he was swamped, get it, swamped, on Thursday, but he still took the time to help out me and eventually help out everybody else who reads. So please check out the articles. They're on point and they're heartfelt.
So you can be as gay as John Hayden and still need a fairy once in a while.
John, listen, thank you so much for both these stories, and just being the incredible journalist that you are. Let's start unpacking some of that. Norm Kent, wow, like what a legacy. And you're absolutely right. Everybody didn't like him, and everybody didn't have to like him, and he was okay with that, which I thought was so badass. I, like you, I only was able to meet him recently, but his legacy will definitely live on. of him helping pro bono folks that got in trouble for sex work and stuff like that back in the day. You know, his plight for marijuana, you know, use. You know, he stood for rights of marginalized folks, and that's what I will remember him as. You know, he also thought I was pretty, which I always think is a plus. You know, he had his opinions, and you know, and I'm gonna say it right here live on this show. When I go, I want to have a funeral at the manor. When I saw that, I was like, how perfect is this?
And
Like,
how cool to have a funeral
incredible.
too, where like part of the room is just there because they hated you and the other part's there because they love you. I think you can pull off the same thing, Faye.
I think I could. Like, when you walk in, like, which side are you on? Right? No.
She was a bitch.
She was a bitch. Here to the all right, got it. You know, but Norm, I don't think, you know, so I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for anybody who was in his circle, because he was definitely a huge man and he touched a lot of different people. And then when it comes to the flood, wow, you know, it was a 1 in 1,000 year flood that we had here in South Florida. It was unexpected. No one was prepared for it. We have friends that lost everything. We have friends who lost their cars. That's like their main possession, you know, and to see a community come together and try to help each other. You know, now there's a gas shortage. And now there's people like helping others with their gas, you know, like helping them get to where they need to go. And that is when, you know, that's when a community has to get together. I wish that we would come together when it came to this awful LGBTQ plus stuff that's being thrown at us. We should come together in this same way, because people's lives are at stake, just like it is for a flood or anything else.
I agree. Every opportunity I have, I say the L, the G, the B, the T, the Q, we got to get our shit together and come together, because that's the only way that we're going to get through this. The only way we're going to get through to the other side of all of this.
And an affront to one of us is an affront to all.
Absolutely.
Of course. Now, Trini, I know that you have no idea what happened, because that flood didn't go all the way down to Homestead, right? But there was a flood. We had a lot of water. We had like 2 feet in
Well,
a
I
day.
didn't have gas. I had to go at 2 in the morning just to be able to get here today.
Okay.
So I feel for y'all a little bit. But also, Homestead, if y'all remember, was ground zero for Hurricane Andrew. So I know about
140 years ago.
Yes.
They still haven't rebuilt.
From the 90s.
To be honest, there are a couple places that haven't.
Oh my God.
Next, let's queer up business. Twitter removes policy against misgendering users. Twitter has quietly removed specific protections against targeted misgendering and dead naming from its hateful conduct policy, as spotted by the nonprofit organization Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD. According to the Wayback Machine, the inclusion of misgendering and dead naming was removed on April 8th, the day after Twitter announced it had updated the policy to clarify how it defines targeted harassment. The company had initially adjusted the same policy back in 2018 to better clarify that its protections against abuse applied to misgendering and dead naming. GLAAD describes the adjustments as the latest example of just how unsafe the company is for users and advertisers alike. End quote. Sadly, this change doesn't come as much of a surprise with Elon Musk at the helm of Twitter. Musk has espoused transphobic ideologies and implemented a policy that brings transphobic users and other controversial figures back onto Twitter. Last year, Musk's daughter, who is trans, reportedly cut ties with her father. Its hateful conduct policy still explicitly prohibits attacking others based on race, ethnicity, national origin, caste, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. But the choice to intentionally remove all mention of misgendering and dead naming seems like a calculated jab at the trans community. You know, when I look at the United States position in the world, I seem to remember having a moral authority and taking a look at which countries were following human rights, and that would be how we made trade decisions and relationship decisions. Are we becoming kind of a second-class country where now other people are going to go, yeah, you're not buying Swiss chocolate because you guys don't even know how to treat your own people. I think this is embarrassing, but it's really just a symptom of a larger backlash towards our community and trying to erase us.
Listen, the second that they allow derogatory and bashing on Twitter, FayWhat got the F out, okay? I left my Twitter account right then and there, and I posted about it on my Facebook, okay? All you folks should do the same, okay? And you Tesla owners also should be if you're gay and you're driving a Tesla, you should go look in the mirror and have a deep conversation with yourself, all right? I get it, cute cars, but not worth it. I mean, you are literally putting that money into Elon Musk's pocket, and the guy he hates us, okay? And it is a direct jab at the trans community. It totally is. So that's why we should not be supporting Twitter at all, even gay Twitter.
It's not a place for any kind of real discussion where research is used or people are open to learning and everything. It has just become a place where people bark at each other. And I got the hell out right when you did.
Yeah.
Well, and to a certain extent, that's social media in general. But on an extreme level, and certainly it's leading the way. But here's the problem. Twitter to me is almost like a public utility at this point, because last week during the flood that we've just talked about, Wilton Manors police were using their Twitter handle to notify people in real time. Do not come down this street. It is flooded in 2 feet of water. Wilton Manors police rescued people trapped in cars. They had 3 calls, which is a lot for a 2-mile square city in a 24-hour period. But they could have had twice that many or 3 times that many if people weren't being updated through Twitter. So as hateful and terrible as their conduct is and their vision is, we also have to accept that at least social media, and at the current moment, Twitter is it can be a force for good. But Elon Musk is the tool.
But we can't rely on that for any kind of communication that is like a public communication. NPR has taken off all of its comments and accounts on Twitter just because of how they were labeled. There was another government-funded kind of knowledge information base that have just removed themselves as well. So as we remove ourselves, unfortunately, it's getting more and more biased in a bad way.
Well, Elon Musk is showing his hand. Before he took over Twitter, even maybe a year or 2 ago, he was still looked at as this new innovator. He's the SpaceX kind of thing. He's the guy that we should be having on all the talk shows. We should be interviewing him on 60 Minutes. And he's showing what a hateful jerk he is and how phobic he is of everything. But honestly, I don't feel like he actually cares as much about that. I think that he is trying to get in with the Republican Party. I think he's trying to get in with Donald Trump, with all of these supporters, so he can increase his power. And to your point, I mean, all these things, policies, it's not just the dead naming. Before with NPR, it was, and I just pulled it up just to make sure I got it right, which is government-funded media, which is the label you put on propaganda outlets in Russia, in China, and they put it on our own American NPR, which is one of the most reliable sources of information. And of course, that playbook of, make sure you don't get people to distrust the media, which is part of that kind of communistic, playbook. So I think that everybody should jump off of Twitter. I think it's a horrible place. And it just reminds me of a heated conversation we had a couple weeks ago on one of the shows about, do we trust China with TikTok and our information? Do we trust Americans more? You can see where it's going with our own media in our own country.
Well, for sure. Yeah. All right, next, let's queer up entertainment. Non-binary and bisexual singer Halsey and Hard Rock Life team up to benefit LGBTQ plus causes. Halsey shared a tweet announcing her partnership with Hard Rock Life to perform reimagined versions of their songs for a good cause. The donations and proceeds for the show will benefit 2 LGBTQIA plus focus organizations, Outright International and Human Rights Campaign. Outright International advocates for human rights and equality for LGBTQ plus people and invests in the community and allies worldwide to produce cultural, social, and legal change. Human Rights Campaign aims to ensure all LGBTQ plus people, and particularly those who are trans, people of color, or HIV positive, are treated as equal citizens around the world. In addition, the event will also benefit Hard Rock Heals, which provides assistance to health and wellness, disaster relief, humanitarian causes, and more around the world. The 3 shows will occur on June 24th in Hollywood, Florida, June 30th in Gary, Indiana, and July 2nd in Wheatland, California. Halsey's exciting announcement comes amid a treacherous time in the music industry, where a few artists have been sharing transphobic responses to trans activist Dylan Mulvaney's teaming up with Anheuser-Busch to promote the brand's Easy Carry contest, including Kid Rock and Travis Tritt. Additionally, conservative politicians have been targeting trans people, drag queens, and queer culture in recent weeks, leading to a surge in anti-LGBTQ+ bills surging through Republican-led legislators. This just really gets my goat. What do you all think about this?
I love Halsey. I love her. I was actually listening to her on the way up. I've had a crush on her since she started singing, right? And I love that, she slowly came out. And again, it's at your own time. People gave her shit for not being gay enough, okay? And it was like, girl, let her be her, okay? So she came out as bisexual, then she announced her pronouns being she, they, so non-binary as well. And, I love that she's doing this. We need more artists to do something like this, So it's June 24th. It's a week after Stonewall. So you've got plenty of time to get over the Stonewall, exhaustion, right? And get back over to the Hard Rock to see this performance live. I think it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, I was really, and I should have done more research on this story, but well, first off, I love Halsey. She was on SNL as the musical guest a season or two ago. If that is any indication of how her live show is going to be on like a 2-hour span, for God's sakes, get some tickets. But I was surprised because Gary, Indiana and Wheatland, California. So I'm guessing that there are Seminole Hard Rock casinos in Gary and Wheatland, because they're not exactly the cultural centers that you would expect something like this to go down. But that said, thank you for supporting us. And I think I said this on one of the shows a week or two ago. When we when our allies make themselves known to us, we embrace them and we need to support them because we can't do it alone.
Yeah. And what an example, I think, of strength. I am not that tough or that strong.
To do what?
To go on every single day talking about her experience and her transition and just being like a beacon of light and hope while all of this stuff is going on around her. I think it's just absolutely touching that she goes beyond the pain and hurt of that and says, I am here to add value to other people today, no matter what's happening to me. I think she's one of the most beautiful examples of strength that you could have.
And you think about our other musicians, David Bowie back in the day, who did basically the same thing but couldn't verbalize it. So people just were like, okay, you can be you, but just don't address it, don't say it.
The Queen headman,
right?
Like him, he was so flamboyant and so out there, but it wasn't something that was spoken about.
No.
Now you have the ability to talk about it, and we need for you to be louder than ever.
Yeah, we do.
Well, next we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church, and it's right here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine and supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ+ religious live broadcast in the world every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern.
Well, that's it for today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That's the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Fay What? And on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the incredible anchors of Queer News Tonight, including John Hayden, TriniDaddy, Mark Pettitt, and Franchesca D'Amore, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. To our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you good night.
Good night.
Bye.